Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, episode 326. And something we haven't done in a little while. It's not really a gear review, first and foremost, for anybody joining in. It's more of an initial thought. So that's the way I'm looking at it. And to be fair, Ben is the one with all the equipment, so I'm going to be asking him questions, and he's going to be giving us some input, because this is something I've looked at, and I'm sure that anybody that has done any kind of bushcrafting, prepping, just home preparedness, has probably looked into something similar to this at some stage at their curiosity. And what we're talking about here today, well, actually, why don't you tell us what we're talking about here today, Ben?
Yeah, we're talking about a few things, but together it creates one specific piece of kit for me. And we're talking about a solar generator, solar power supply, or solar chargeable power supply, and a 12-volt powered refrigeration unit. So the one we have, and you have, I think, the link to both of it. The power supply, I don't think they make anymore. The same company still does make one. They make a 2,000 watt one. That the 1,500 that I have is no longer produced.
And I was going to say, that was the first thing I noticed when I was doing some quick research. I could not find the 15. I found a 600 and a 2,000. So yours is just a discontinued model, but same idea on either ends of those, just a little more wattage or a little less wattage.
Yeah. And I did a lot of research when I got into this, and I think it's really important. Anyone who's thinking of doing something similar, do your research on both your products, the power draw for the item you want, and the power availability. And make sure you keep a bit of a factor in there, because you never want to use 100% of your power, and you never want to assume that your solar system is going to produce 100% of what it's rated for. So if it's rated for 400 watts, you're lucky to get 300, to be honest with you, right? And you're going to have to think about, how you're going to charge it, what options you have. And there's things that might come to your mind. Oh, I can just do that. And we're going to talk about does that really work? So for instance, I'll just charge it off my car. Believe it or not, you have to do an awful lot of driving to fully charge that unit off your 12-volt cigarette. I'm not going to lie to you. It just ain't there, right?
I was going to say, when you plug it into your car, if you are not using it, does it charge better than if you are using it? And can you use it while it's plugged into your car? Have you ever tried any of these situations?
Yes, you can do all these things. So it can work, even plugged into the wall. Like I can plug it into my house, and it works as a UPS system. So if you have sensitive electronics, this thing also works for that. If you want something that kind of cleans your power, so say you're at a place with dirty power, this might be a method to clean your power before it goes into your device, right? I have a 100-watt out USB-C port, so you could use that to run a lot of newer laptops, tablets, fast charging for your phone. These are all great things. And yes, if it has power going in, it'll monitor power in and power out, and it'll tell you how long till it's fully charged or how long till it's fully discharged at the rate you're going. So it monitors these two things and gives you an estimate. And it's kind of a real-time estimate, so you have to think about that as when, say, the refrigerating unit is running at full power. It might say you got 15 hours, but then it's going to shut off for a while, and it's going to say you have like 45 hours. The reality is it's probably somewhere in between, right?
So one thing I wanted to address before we move on, and it's just clarification. If anybody's wondering what dirty power is, we're not talking about physically dirty power. Dirty power, for those that aren't familiar with the term, it just means the power that's coming into your building may not be constant. Technically, you can get dirty power from a generator, for say. If there's a bunch of stuff on it that kicks on and off. As you have a generator running, and I'm using some hypotheticals here, folks, just to get a point across, but say you got a generator running and it's running your fridge, and all of a sudden you turn a microwave on the same generator. Well, as that generator is kind of balancing out the load that's put on it, it's going to drop the power to the fridge as it spikes the power to the microwave, just to try and get that initial startup power, because as Ben was talking about, there's like initial startup powers, and then there's running powers, and then maximum output versus constant output, whole bunch of other science there. But basically, dirty power is when you get that imbalance, instead of getting a true 110 or 120, whatever you want to call it, that may dip down. And certain electronics that can be really bad for it. So what the system Ben's talking about here is it will provide a constant supply of a specific voltage regardless of what the voltage does coming into that source. So that's what it means by cleaning the power. It's not scrubbing it in the sense of dirt, it's cleaning it as it keeps it balanced. So very sensitive electronics, computers, some cameras, a lot of smart equipment, if they take that dip or browning out, it can do a lot of harm to them, and that's where this will step in and clean that up. Anyway, just wanted to clarify that because I could hear the eyebrows going up with, what do you mean dirty power?
There's also a thing called a pure sine wave, and not like proper good power, like what you get off most grids, is in a sine wave shape. But some cheaper generators, they don't do that, and it's much more cut off. So you get like spikes, and it's not as clean. Some equipment kind of gets a shock from it, if that's sort of the best way to describe it. It's more abrupt up volts and down volts, and it's not as smooth. So if it's very sensitive equipment, you may damage it. It may struggle to fix it. So that's a method to deal with that. And so that's what UPS systems tend to do. It means that even if there's dips in power and issues, your output is the same, and it'll kind of deal with that.
It's quote unquote clean.
Yeah. So a tool like that is kind of useful, depending on where you're to. So the way I looked at it is I was looking for an off-grid solution. When you're backwoods camping, when you're doing maybe more overland stuff, or you have a camp set up in a more remote area, and you're like, I want to go back and spend a couple of weeks, but I don't have grid power, and I don't necessarily have the time or room to bring a full generator and fuel and all that. Is there a solution that maybe is a little bit more eco-friendly, maybe long-term serviceable? So that's what I was testing it with. So this particular fridge I have used for well over a year now, and it's been outside. I have a deck at the front of my condo, and it sits out there, and I've been running it at cold temperatures in max system, and it's done really well. It's preserved a ton of food for me at frozen temperature, so I can say that it works well for that.
Just before we go on there, Ben, we have a first-timer joining us here. We have Rebecca Sherrock, or Sherrock. I don't know what the inflection is on that last name. Anyway, joining us from the UK. First-timer catching a live show. Well, welcome to the show, Rebecca. Thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure. If you have any input, by all means, throw it in there. As you can tell, we try to get to everybody's comments, at least at some point. If we don't get to it right away, it's not because we're ignoring you. We just try to squeeze it in where we can. We also have Steve and Eric joining us there, of course. Steve just pointing out that they just put a full fire ban in effect over here in Nova Scotia until October 15th, unless things change, because of how dry it's been and all the heat waves we've been having. And Rebecca, been following for years. Great to be here live. Great topic, too. Not one in the archive that I can remember. No, this is one of the first here, too. I know we're at like 326 episodes, and we're starting to repeat some stuff, but we do try to space out the repeating stuff, and we still try to have an influx of fresh stuff. So if you're just joining us, Rebecca, basically Ben has a UPS system, or in this case it's a power inverter with some solar panels and a cooler that he's been running, and we're just looking at the initial thoughts on this. Kind of, I don't want to say a review, because a review would say that we have a final verdict on this. And maybe I'm wrong, Ben, but you're still kind of learning as you're going with this, too. You've only had it for a couple months now?
No, I've had it since almost a year.
Okay.
We bought it last year after our last trip, and what we found was we were traveling a week plus camping, and the problem was we ran out of ice. And everywhere we went, like literally northern BC, there was no ice to be gotten. We go to the gas stations. We went, like the ice delivery isn't coming through. And so our cooler was heating up, and we had no way to cool it down. And I'm like, this is a poor solution for this type of trip. And so we were buying a lot of ice. That was taking up a lot of room in our coolers. So we found that wasn't very beneficial. So this system, we can run. It's got two sections. I don't know if you've thrown up a link to sort of show.
I can definitely throw up a picture of it. Here, let me get it up here. This is the cooler we're talking about here, folks. Those of you that are not joining us on the YouTube channel, you're missing out. Those of you that are on the YouTube channel, here we go. This is what we're talking about right here.
So it has two sections. The doors are reversible. You can change them one way or the other. You can have them opposite if you want. And there's a small section and a big section. You can control the temperature to either one. You can make the big size the freezer, or the small size, or both, or you can make them both cooler. Um, and so you can choose whatever temperature you want. It maintains it really well. We've been using this for a while, and I can say for that it's worked well. I have the 120-volt power supply that it came with plugged in, and it's been running for months with no issue. And it's really helped us because we only have a small fridge here, and we're able to use that as an extension of our at-home cooling system, which means that we have multi-use for it. Like, it's not just something we buy for camping and it's not being used. And I like it. It's really good. It does work by a compressor. It does have some modes to help it reduce power consumption. And I was able to get like -16, -17 temperatures in it while camping this week, and some fairly high temperatures.
Just to
So,
clarify, too, Rebecca is actually Matt. He's just using his wife's account.
oh, very good. So, yeah, I mean, I highly recommend it. My cousin has one that's a three-way, which means you can run it on propane, 12 volt, and 120. This one can run basically on 12 volt or 120. I couldn't find one being sold readily here that does propane that isn't like part of a camper or something, like a portable one that you can take anywhere. Just, they don't make many of them anymore. Canadian Tire still says they have one, but it's out of stock.
Yeah, that comes a lot, unfortunately. Now, you said yours does run on 120 and 12 volt, and you've been running it on the 120 out on the deck. When you were away on your camping trip, were you doing more of the 12 volt, or were you running it through the inverter this time?
I was running it through the no, I was running it off the 12 volt. The 12 volt, when available, because it has a power block which changes it to 12 volt anyway. So if you're better off not re-changing power. So yes, because it can, you're better off not running the inverter where you can avoid it. The inverter does take a little bit of power to run, and so your batteries won't last quite as long if you're using it for AC power. That's the same thing if you're charging your laptop and you can use the USB-C for that option. You're better off using the 100-watt output than plugging it into the AC section, because it'll run your hair dryer. It'll run devices up to 1,500 watts, no problem, which is really good. But no. So that, yeah, the cooler part, I'm really pleased with. I really am. It's a bit bigger than I would like. And my one complaint is the handle you can pull out jams every now and then. It only comes out about half the time. And sometimes you'll be pulling along and it'll come fully out. And then putting it in, it tends to jam. One side is worse than the other. I probably could fix it if I took the time, but I haven't really. But other than that, I also made a cover out of what do you call it? The windshield reflector, like the
Mylar stuff.
Yeah, the Mylar bubble type stuff. I made a cover for it, and I stick over the top when it's outside. Keeps rain, snow, debris off of it, and also kind of, because it's black, rather than have the sun heat it on, it kind of reflects that away, and I think it helps. So yeah, really good device. Kind of big, it's a hard decision to make. Like, how much do you want? You really want to go with the smallest one you can get away with, but you don't want to go with one smaller than you need. So
I was going to ask you on the size of this. This one's listed as a 51 liter. Yeah. You said it's a little too big? The physical size is too big, but the storage space is just right, kind of deal?
It's a big unit, so it does take up precious space when you're traveling by car or SUV. We with the two of us, it was probably the biggest thing we took, like, to be honest. And it took up half my trunk, which meant the other half was really the dog kennel. So we didn't have a lot of room for storage with that back there. And you do have to leave the one side free so it can circulate air. So you can't jam things up to it too much. You have to be reasonable, right?
So it does have its limitations at the end of the day.
Of course. I mean, nothing's perfect. But when we bought it for when we had the whole family of 5. So 5 people drinking drinks, that's 5 cans of drink probably a day at least. plus bottles of water if you want to keep water cool, or if you want to make ice. My wife is coming up with some solutions for making ice that will not take up too much room, not too bulky, that we don't have to worry about tipping, because a mobile cooler is moving around all the time. It's not
Mm.
like your fridge. So those are some things to consider. But if you get back there, this worked really well. So this 1500-watt unit that we have, the power supply, uh, when I'm driving in the car hooked to 12 volts, honestly, I was probably 4 hours of driving equaled less than 10% charge.
Yeah, and you and I had talked about this before. Surprisingly enough, you said you got better results with the solar panels on a
Quite
decently
a bit,
sunny day.
actually. Yeah.
And if anybody's wondering, just because I haven't actually shown it yet, this is the power inverter that Ben is using there, and it's what is it? Pecron or Pecron?
Pickrone, yeah.
Picron? Pickering portable station. You got the 1500-watt version. It looks, and this is just my initial description to folks that once again aren't joining us on YouTube. But something I noticed with this is it had lots of outputs on it. It had three. At least this version here has three 110 outlets. But what I liked was it had 6 USBs. I think 2 of them are USB-Cs and 4 of them are standard USB.
Yeah.
But it had tons of outputs because the majority of stuff, or at least for me in my situation, that I'm connecting to something like this is the tech. We're charging our phones, we're charging our watches, we're charging Lily's tablet. I'm never really charging or running that much other than all the technology that we have kind of become dependent on in my situation when the power goes out. And for me, it ain't worth starting a generator to charge 3 cell phones. Most times.
Exactly. I mean, it really, and even with something like that, like it comes with a little package that captures all the cables and stuff goes in it. And one of it, I mean, it's nice. It's literally, it looks like the same plug you use for your monitor, and you plug that in, and you can charge it from any 120 source. So it has the converter inside also, or the charger built internal. So all you need is a cord. So anytime you come across household current, you can charge this unit up pretty quickly. Like when I plug it in, I think probably been an hour, you can go from like 20% to almost full charge. So it pulls pretty good. Like it pulls, I think I looked it up, it can pull like 15 amps at 120, which is like 1800 watts peak. That's what the packaging says. Plugging it into your 12-volt power supply to your car, you're looking at maybe 10 amps at 12 volts, so 120 to maybe it's 15 amps. So, but you have to realize anything more than that, you're going to pop the the fuse in your car, right? So, pulling 100 and something watts and running the fridge, which in my case probably is around 60, 70 watts when it's running, means you're not gaining a lot of power. When I plugged the solar panels in, I have two 200 amp or 200 watt solar panels, and they're pretty nice. They're relatively compact. They pack really flat. There's 4 panels on each one. There's a linking cord, so you hook them sort of in series and you plug it in. And I was pulling well over 200 watts when I plugged it in. Offman's between 153 to 280 quite regularly. So direct sunlight, no clouds and all that, I'm pulling pretty good power. So what I was doing on the days I needed it, I would just lay the panels out, either stand them up or lay them on the back where they were out of the way of everyone and in clear sunlight. Plug it into the unit. It meant I had to move it around the site a little bit. And honestly, 1 or 2 hours, and I pretty well topped it up. I never dropped below 60 my entire 6-day trip. So we were out for, I think, just over 6 days. And we never once dropped below 60%.
And what were you saying you were running off this? You had the cooler, you had your tech. Was there anything that you're running more consistently?
No, the cooler was running constantly. We each have cell phones, which we ran. And I also, like, we had some camera equipment and stuff that we maintained. But honestly, I didn't do a lot with that. So worked really well, honestly. I know if we had the kids, it would be 3 more cell phones, probably. I know my wife ran a Switch off of it, so her Nintendo Switch was coming off of it. Maybe a few other odds and ends. When you're obviously you have your car things plugged into your car. What I'm planning on doing, and this is something I've thought a lot about. I may even do it tonight. Canadian Tire has an inverter for sale right now, and I think it's 1500 watt, or yeah, 15 or 1600 watt. And I think that unit can run it. Well, not can run it, can charge off it without popping it off. And it has cords I can run right to the battery of my vehicle.
Oh, I
With
see
a
what you're
remote
going to do.
control.
You're going to run the inverter from your car, then try to charge the portable inverter off the stationary inverter in the car. Gotcha.
So then run the extension cord into the unit. When you're driving, you can pull more power from your alternator than you can through that little one, 12-volt outlet. And I should be able to charge that unit up really quick, because it doesn't take long to do an hour. Like, an hour drive is nowhere, right?
Yeah.
So driving an hour a day, and when you're traveling, if you take that unit, throw it in there, and top it up, you can do it. And even idling your vehicle, like if you had to use it, like if you had 2 or 3 days of rain and you had no method of really recharging, I'd love that all, because when you got sun, solar is definitely the way to go. But on the trips like we did, we were, we tried to stay stationary for one day at each campground. We did 3 campgrounds, so we had a day in each campground to kind of enjoy it, and then we had travel day between them. And the travel day, I wasn't gaining as much power as I was, honestly, in a few hours with the sun. And then we'd go for a walk, and we'd come back, and I'd look at it, and it's like, oh, I've already gained 5-10% in a relatively short time. But yeah, no, I was pulling some really good power, 300-400 watts, not quite 400 watts ever. But every time I read it, the fridge and probably some other devices were plugged into it. And you plug it in, it says, 999 hours to discharge, which means I'm pulling in more power significantly than I was putting out. So the solar panels really worked.
So for the 200 watt, and we're coming up on 22 minutes here, so I do have some questions I'm trying to hammer out in case anybody's interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
For the one you have, which is the 1500 watt kind of constant to about 2000 watt maximum, I think is what the stats were when I looked at it, right? Would you say that would be, I don't want to say significantly, would that be adequate? It's obviously adequate for 2 people. Would you say it would be adequate for you and the girls if you had gone out like a full family of 5, or is that just getting a little too unrealistic? I suppose it's not going to pull any more from the cooler, but adding on maybe a laptop and a couple more cell phones, would that have put a big dampening in things on you?
Well, since I never dropped below 60, I think it would be more than enough. Honestly, when we did our last trip, we had a couple like those Burns Electric solar panels that you, like me and you have. We have one of those, and a couple of power supplies that have their own charging on it. And the last trip we did, we had 4 or 5 of those sitting across the dash or the hood of the van at any given time. And we were keeping those charged up to charge all our individual devices. And that worked. Like I hooked the Burns Electric to one of those units, plus its own solar power, and I could pretty well top those up pretty good. This unit with a much bigger solar panel can do all that pretty easily. Honestly, you really probably shouldn't be charging your phones off anything higher than the 18 watt USB ports on it anyways. If you hook to the 100 watt, you're probably it's a lot for your phones. So you could easily run, 5 phones off that. You're still only talking about 100 watts. And what most phones charge mostly within an hour or so.
Yeah, thereabouts. I mean, older phones are a little less reliable, but yeah, I'm good with that. So the other thing I was going to say was, you said you had 2 200 watt solar panels, but this unit will actually take larger solar panels. It'll go up to like 400 watt solar panels or something like that. Once again, it was on that sheet. It was either 400 or 900 watt solar panels, but you can get some pretty big solar panels for this thing, is all I'm trying to get out. In which case, 700 watt max charging solars. So it can take up to 700 watts of solar panels. If you're running at... You have 400 watts worth of solar panels. You're charging at a pretty good rate. If you were to jump up to the 700 watts worth of solar panels, you're probably going to be charging this much faster than you're ever using it up. And it would probably help you in the lower light conditions if somebody was a little power hungry comparative to your usage. Does that make sense?
And yeah. I see that as a huge advantage. Let's talk about a more stationary situation with this thing. So say you have a small camp and you want to bring this back, and you have some solar panel more preset up. Um, you can run like bigger units, like a hair dryer or a small induction stove or something like that. And honestly, you can run it for 15, 20 minutes, and you have 900 watts or 700 watts available from a solar system. It means that, yeah, you're pulling twice as fast as you you're putting in, but you're probably not running that constantly. Few devices run that power very constantly. So honestly, you use it for half an hour, but you're charging for 2, 3 hours. You've more than made up for that. The fridge unit, that efficient little fridge unit, I can run that pretty well more than 24 hours without recharging. I think I worked out mathematically it should be close to 30 something hours. And that varies on based on the outside temperature and the amount you protect it. Keep it out of direct sunlight. Try to keep it in the shade. Try to insulate it where you can. Make sure the vent where it circulates air is free, so it's not trying to recirculate hot air for it. But it works like your fridge in your house. It compresses air. You can actually sometimes hear it boiling off. Like it compresses this fluid and then pumps it into the unit, and it boils it off, and that's how it's taking this heat energy. So it's really efficient.
Speaking of heat energy, how did you find the heating of this unit? Where it is an inverter, a lot of inverters, including that one you're probably looking at, Canadian Tire, depending on the load you're putting on it or putting into it, they can generate a ton of heat. At any time, has this unit ever gotten to the point where you're like, maybe that's a little too hot for this? Or has it
Well,
been rather good for heat distribution?
Honestly, I'm mostly using the DC side of it, which I don't need the inverter for. So you have two buttons, a DC button up top and an AC button below. You only turn the AC on when you're planning on using AC. You only turn the DC on when you're planning on using DC. But all your 12-volt and USB-C power is DC power. There's even a key charger on the top. So if you have a wirelessly chargeable phone, you just lay it on top of it and it'll charge the phone that way.
Oh, that's kind of neat. Never even seen that in the stats. So overall,
Yeah.
you're rather satisfied with it. It sounds like. Is it doing what you expected? Is there anything you're still waiting to see if it's going to do for you, or is there any pending results?
No, I'm fairly happy with it. There are different brand names out there that if you're looking, you really should consider. Jackery makes one that seems to get some pretty good reviews. Blutelli, I think, is another one that I read and there's another Eco something. Each of these have advantages and disadvantages. Look into it, see what the history is. Some people have had some trouble with this particular unit. I've seen some complaints about it. I haven't personally had any of the problems. It was lithium iron, which the lithium iron batteries are considered more robust but heavier.
Mm.
So they're supposed to be able to do like 10,000 charges before you start to see like a degradation in its, or something silly like that. Where other things, so this one's only probably been cycled 15, 20 times since I've gotten it. Fully cycled.
Yeah.
I've managed to maintain it up fairly good. That's look for the best battery technology that's out there. Look for something with adequate AC power. So if you're planning on running 3,000 watts, you need one that can put out 3,000 watts regularly. And then think about your overall power demand. Like, what are you planning on doing? If you're only planning on running a heavy wattage item for a couple of minutes a day, then you figure out what that math is going to be, and it's probably aimed to use no more than 80% of what you need in a day or within a day or two. Right? So in a 24-hour cycle, somewhere you expect to be able to charge this up a solar panel or with, by plugging it into a decent, like an inverter out of your car or maybe some other generator unit. But it allows you to use power almost 24 hours without making noise and stuff. In a lot of places, you can't run like a generator, or you don't want to drag it in. So that solar panel is really quiet. You can also hook wind turbines to it, right? Like the input power is pretty well there's three ways to put power into it, four ways, I guess. There's two for the solar panels, but I think you can get the same outlets for wind power. And then there's your car 12-volt input. So if you have a 12-volt car, you can plug that directly into it. And then you also have the AC input. So yeah, three, I guess.
Let's see. So Matt, just with some comments over here, because I do want to get to them before we finish off here. We use our hours van camping. Key for us is the number of amp hours the unit holds, about 45 for our system. And then the drain on the system. Small domestic fridge and kids, 100-watt solar panels equals about 2 days. And also they're on the UK sun. So something else he wants to throw in there for the cooler is freezing stuff before leaving and prime the fridge at home saves power when away. Buys a good 6 to 12 hours extra. And that is key. If you are going to be running a cooler or something like that, it's always good to put the coldest stuff in. Even if you're running liquids, especially water, I'll almost pre-freeze some of the bottles I have before I put them in a cooler just to keep that extra cold, because it is far easier to keep something cold than to get it cold in the first place. It takes a lot of power and stuff like that just to get that initial cooling, because it's got to run the compressor for so long to keep it there. So if everything's going in at room temperature, you may have to run that compressor for like an hour straight to get it down to where it needs to be. Providing if everything's already cold, it kicks on for maybe a total of 10 minutes in that hour just to maintain that temperature. Big differences.
Also, keeping it as full as possible at all points really helps, because cooling air doesn't take a lot of energy, but that air tends to leak out, disappear. When you open the door, it refreshes all that air, and it has to work to do that more often. So air temperature changes easily, and that's a problem. It gets cold quick, but it also warms up quick. Where solid items hold their temperature, they have a thermal mass to them. They tend to want to stay at the temperature you're at. So if it's empty, you're much better off putting a couple of pop bottles full of cold water in there and letting them freeze or stay cold than leaving it empty. I was thinking while I was camping that even if you took a whole bunch of like Ziploc bags or even balloons and just filled them with air so that the air wouldn't be able to move freely, that would be better than just leaving it empty. So those balloons would stay the same temperature, and regardless of the external, it's not just going to flow out, because air is a fluid and it's easily replaced with warm or cold air depending on what's going on. So filling that fridge, though, much better with something with some good thermal mass, like water or meat or something. Anything in that fridge is better than nothing.
100%. And the last one that should go without saying, but it does get missed a lot, the more you open it, obviously, the harder it's going to work. I know in the power outage, what we've always used as rule of thumb, and I don't know if it's just a number we made up, it's been passed down through the generations or not, but every time you open your fridge, you lose 4 minutes. Roughly. Is what was always the rule of thumb I had. So during a power outage, depending on what's in your fridge, you can kind of mathematically calculate how long your fridge should be good before you got to, turn the generator on, or how long something's going to spoil in there, or whatever. Every single time you open the fridge, just the act of opening it and closing it, the idea is you let this wash of warmer air in, colder air out. It lowers the overall temperature so much that you lose approximately 3 to 5 minutes, so we always said 4 minutes of life. Yeah. But I mean, if you're constantly opening the door, that adds up pretty quick.
Well, and you picture like your household fridge, when you open it up, cold air is heavier than hot air.
Sinks and out.
Air just literally falls out the bottom of your fridge, and then warm air is following in behind it. So you close the door, it now has to change that air temperature inside, that you lost the cold air, now you have. So that, and that's flowing over your food. It's warming up your food as it goes. So 100%. The thing with these coolers at the top, the cold air does tend to stick in there, but you're putting your hands in there, you're kind of knocking it out. If you think about it as a fluid, every time you pull something in and out, you're displacing some of that air. There's a flow, and so you lose some of your cold. You're gaining with heat, and then your fridge has to work a little bit harder to maintain that temperature. And every time working harder is watts. It's kilowatt hours. It's power that you have to replace somewhere. So that's a really important thing to think about. Power management is not maybe a bushcraft thing, but it is a long-term solution to a big problem. Like if you're going for a trip and you want to keep something cool, there are methods to do that. And obviously, like I said, putting it in the shade, right? a really neat trick is just take some moss and pile up next to things because moss tends to stay cool. It has that evaporation. If your cooler self stays cool, it doesn't have to work as hard.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
It's easier to
think
keep
of it
something cool than get it cool in the first place. So, uh,
we
oh, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
right. Okay. We struggled a couple times. Like, do we keep it in the vehicle because the vehicle heats up? We kept the windows and stuff open. We had sunroof in the vehicle, or do we keep it in the tent? The tent seemed to get super hot, but at least it was out of the direct sunlight, so it's not like the sun was hitting the item and heating it up. So we were often thinking about this stuff. We even at one point, I just threw a blanket over it, leaving the one corner open, just because to me, having the sun hit a light colored blanket, and it was kind of like a thicker, fleecy blanket, is better than hitting it directly on the black plastic.
That actually totally makes sense because it's still reflecting a lot of that infrared heat. So we are coming up past the 35-minute mark. I want to get to these last three questions, Ben, just before we finish up here. Okay, on the power system, one thing you like that you weren't expecting.
I don't know. I did a hell of a lot of research. I think that it did last better than I wanted, and it charges well. Like people said with the solar, you constantly got to move the solar panels and stuff. Yeah, you do, but maybe once an hour is more than enough if you set them up right. You kind of like anticipate where the light is, so it's you know you got 15, 20 minutes before it's peak, and then deal with it after 15, 20 minutes after it's peak. You got some time, right? Near the middle of the day, you can just turn a light on the ground and just let the sun go over it. And honestly, I was producing way more power than I needed. So I would say do go a little overboard with solar panel if you can, simply because it's not
There's no
consistent.
harm.
Cloudy day, you're not getting full power. And you could see it when a cloud went over. I could watch my power drop by a half at least.
Okay, so that's what you like. One thing you don't like or wish you could have changed.
Weight and volume.
Now, size-wise, I didn't think it was that big. Does the picture not do it justice? It looks about the size of two loaves of bread jammed together.
It's about the size of a small microwave.
Okay, that is bigger than what I expected.
I can bring it in, actually, if you want. But it's also probably weighs in excess of 50 pounds.
Oh, I was not expecting that kind of weight either. So when I looked at this online, folks, just for kind of a quick guess, I was looking at this and I was thinking of something that's maybe smaller than your standardized mailbox. No, that's not the political boombox. Boombox. I think that's the politically correct term for what I'm trying to think of. Is a boombox.
So this is the box with all the wiring and stuff in it. It's kind of useful. Here's the unit, and it's kind of.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's heavier and bigger than I was expecting. Okay.
So, it is of a significant size. I was just looking to see if I have a quick measuring tape here. I mean, the size is probably on the site if you look.
Let me take a look there. I'll pull up the size. You can keep chatting about it there.
I got a measure tape here anyway.
Oh, okay, good enough. I was gonna say it should be right here.
By 9.5 by 12 inches. So 12 inches high, 15 inches wide, 9.5 deep. Plus, you need to leave access to your front accessible. So all these, you don't want to damage your cords and stuff. So you see videos where people show them like in a tent out on the desert, and you're like, no vehicles around. Like nobody carried this.
They did not carry it in, is what you're saying.
I can kind of picture like two people, one holding each handle, walking, but you're only going to go a few hundred feet, honestly, reasonably with this thing.
Gotcha.
Beyond that, you're looking at wagon or something. So it isn't too big. Like I said, it's not massive, but when you're traveling, you're always, looking for the way to maximize your space and stuff, and it does take up room. It does have a port in the back. We didn't really mention. You can buy a second battery to go with this. Looks just like it with no ports.
I was going to say, I seen those on the site and I was going to ask about them, but I figured that's a topic for another day. But now that you're
But
mentioning
it
it,
plugs in there, and there's just a cord, and you can sort of double the capacity of the battery system. It doesn't increase your inverter power or anything like that, but so this one here, it has an output capability of 200 or 2,200 watts.
that's the startup or whatever. And for once
Yeah,
again, folks, there's a
that's
startup
your
or sorry, peak. That's the one I'm looking for. Peak is like when an item turns on. So the first blast, your microwave turning on, it hits its peak, and then it kind of boils down to its operational wattage. And the last question I had for you, Ben, does it fit the need you set out to fill?
definitely. I mean, we were very happy with it. Me and the wife tested it quite extensively. One of the things we brought was ice cream, and it seems silly, but you're out for a week, and it's awfully nice to be able to pull an ice cream out at the end of the day and sit down and eat an ice cream that's cold, that's frozen, that's something you don't usually get to do in the bush. That was something I didn't have previous. Freezies, the big freezies don't fit well in the freezer, but it was really neat. We could keep all our devices charged and had never worried about not having enough power to get through the next day. So if you're traveling, you're doing stuff like that, sometimes it's really nice to just not worry about some stuff, and this really helped with that. Again, I'm looking to maximize the room I have, so we have the Foresters, the vehicle we were driving. We had the seats folded, the back seats laid down. We had our tent. We had that big cooler. We had a dog cart or crate, which is fairly big, but still small, kind of tight for the dog. And then this unit and a couple of large Rubbermaid containers with their stuff. I didn't have anything on the roof, and I wasn't pulling anything with the hitch. So what was on the roof was two traction boards and a spare tire. If I had the ability to change something, I would like to move the spare tire down to the rear hitch. I found a few solutions to that. None of them are perfect, but they'll cost a few $100 and save that top space to put more stuff. So in that case, I could have put a couple of Rubbermaid containers up there and gotten rid of a lot of stuff in the back, and potentially had enough room for, say, the kids. Or we wanted to take a inflatable kayak that I have.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't make the cut. It was one thing too much.
Fair enough. So overall, met the need, and it is a recommend. If anybody is looking for a power solution, would you recommend something like this, or would you recommend going in a different direction? Sounds like you're pleased with it.
I am pleased with both devices. I would definitely do your research. I mean, I do have had this for over a year, so now there is always new products coming out and stuff. Do your research. You're definitely looking for probably the most power efficient fridge of the size you figure you need, right? Figure out how much stuff you want to take. For us, it was drinks. Like, our kids like cold drinks. So we wanted something there. You can cycle things through. It's going to use a bit more power, but you don't have to, have all the drinks for your entire trip in there the whole time.
Fair point.
Right? And if you're going to put stuff in, I'd wait till the morning if you could. So overnight is probably the coldest things they'll get anyways. And your fridge doesn't work super hard overnight. And then throw it in the morning. That'll be their coldest point. And then don't let them heat up during the day. So if you change things out as you use them, so say you got bottles of water, bottles of pop, or whatever you're drinking, change them out as you use them, then you'll find yourself a little bit happier with that too, I think.
Fair enough. All right, I think that's a good spot to end it off here tonight. We're up on the 45-minute mark. Any final thoughts on that one, Ben, or?
No, very happy with the experiment. We have a trip planned in August, and it's definitely coming with us. This trip is more of a family trip, so we'll be using a couple of different means of overnighting, including some hotels and some tenting. And this unit will allow us to, camp comfortably while, saving a bit of money by, having the food, not having to eat out as much. I don't know what the return period is for something like this, but eating out as a family isn't cheap, and being able to have good cold food, like just buying ice cream by the dozen or by a box, way cheaper than running to the corner store and buying individual,
Oh,
right?
goodness, yes.
So you can easily save 10, $15 right there, just on that one thing, right?
Oh, for sure. So yeah, it sounds like if anybody's interested in something like this, it's definitely a good way to go. Thanks everybody who joined us over here in the comments, which once again was Eric, Steve. We had Matt join us for the first time. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. Hopefully we get you back on here again. For everybody else, I don't know what we're planning for next week. Like I said, I might be in the woods, but we'll tackle that one when that hurdle comes. We'll figure it out beforehand and we'll let everybody know. For me, at least tonight, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll talk to you next time. Get out there, be safe, have fun, and let us know about any of your adventures. All right, folks. Have a good one.
Night all.